to synthetic opioids and also heroin as the opioid of their choice. Unfortunately, heroin has now become a dangerous and relatively cheap substitute for opioid addicts, a deadly substitute which no longer requires a needle in the arm. It can be ingested, smoked, or even snorted. The size of this heroin seizure, which is one of the largest heroin seizures in Georgia's history, is emblematic of the Mexican drug cartel's efforts to fill the increased market for opioids. The two main factors that are driving the violent Mexican cartels flooding the market with more dangerous drugs such as heroin and methamphetamine are as these. First, the liberal attitude towards marijuana and resulting state marijuana laws that allow in-state cultivation have made trafficking in marijuana less profitable for the cartels. As such, they're switching their business model to traffic more addictive, dangerous, and more profitable illicit drugs, such as heroin, methamphetamine, and cocaine. Second, as law enforcement becomes more successful in reducing the number of painkillers and other prescription opioids that are in the black market, and as the addicts' bodies grow more tolerant to the pills, they seek to increase the dosage to get the same level of high. As a result, the price of painkillers in the black market increases, which makes heroin and other opioids prices more attractive to the addicts. In taking a proactive approach to meet this crisis in the Northern District of Georgia and elsewhere, we have instituted Operation Scope, strategically combating opioids through prosecution and enforcement. This initiative is a focused effort through which we are dedicating additional prosecutive resources to fight the epidemic, using data and the latest technology in identifying the targets of our investigations, and leveraging state and local partnerships at every level to intensify the enforcement of our laws. On the efforts to reduce the demand, we've been working with our partners in the addiction treatment, academic, public health, and other community groups through our heroin working group. We try to raise awareness of the problem, facilitate dialogue and coordination of efforts between stakeholders, and most importantly, to steer those who need intervention and treatment to the appropriate professionals. Let me be clear. Georgia's #1 illegal drug is still methamphetamine, and we're not turning away from our aggressive fight to stop the sale and use of that drug. Rather, what you see here today is an increased commitment to enforce the law, prosecute those who break it, and address the growing crisis in the district. Exploiting addiction for profit creates the desire for control of the illicit business, which fuels the crime and the deadly violence. Drugs, money, and guns. You see it in front of you. I want to applaud the men and women of the DEA, Atlanta, Carolina HIDTA Task Force Group for their efforts in this investigation, and also want to recognize the Georgia State Patrol and also Lilburn PD in their assistance in this investigation. The investigation is ongoing, and we look forward to bringing those who are responsible for flooding our communities with these deadly drugs to justice. I also want to recognize Special Assistant U.S. Attorney Aaron Harris of our office, who is the prosecutor assigned to this case.
Good afternoon. I'm Sergeant Chris Matthews with the Georgia State Patrol. Our unit was called to perform a possible traffic stop on the suspect's vehicle. Troopers arrived on the scene and saw a traffic infraction and made a traffic stop. Became suspicious of criminal activity when they spoke with the driver and deployed a canine on the vehicle. The canine indicated the odor of narcotics inside the vehicle, and a search was performed on the vehicle, and approximately $200,000 was located inside the vehicle on the back seat in a box. Troopers continued their search and located a hidden compartment under the seats that contained approximately 8 ounces of heroin, and obviously that led to the next search warrant. That's all from Georgia State Patrol.
Good afternoon. My name is Almadin Ayanovich. I'm a police officer with the city of Lilburn, assigned to the K-9 unit. My partner in this case was K-9 Ajax. We've been together on the road a little bit over 6 months. I just want to say that in the city of Lilburn, we do look towards reducing illegal narcotics on the streets, and also assisting our nearby agencies, in any manner that we can in order to accomplish that goal and get these illegal narcotics off the streets. Thank you.
So before we answer any questions, I'll make sure that at the end of the press conference that I give you a criminal complaint, and later on I will actually send out a press release. So, Mr. Murphy, did you have?
Yeah, go ahead. On the questions, we'll go ahead and start taking questions.
Well, maybe we could start with Officer Yanovich here. You know, these things hit the streets in our own communities. You know, when you're called and your dog hits, the canine hits on something like that, I mean, what does that mean to you to be part of this big operation and, you know, get these drugs off the streets?
Officer, why don't you come to the microphone?
Well, good question. Honestly, I can't even describe the feeling. I mean, but it all reflects back on training. I mean, you know, we train all the time to, you know, like get these illegal narcotics off the streets. So, I mean, once we came across these illegal narcotics the other night, it was like mind blowing. And I mean, but at the end of the day, it's all, you know, like trusting my dog, and at the end of the day, it's him doing the work and just my observations of his doing. I mean, pretty much all the credit goes to him. I mean, he's the one that does majority of the work. So.
Does Ajax know he had a pretty big fine?
Oh, he knew. He knew.
He's still having fun.
Yes.
Could you tell, you know, for your dog's reaction to various amounts of drugs, does he have the same reaction, like a nickel bag, just he finds this, he just flips over, goes crazy, or what?
Well, they you know, the bigger the find is, the more overwhelming that odor is going to be, and I mean, he's trained to you know, locate the source of the narcotic odor. So of course, if there's more narcotics there, the odor is going to be greater. Therefore, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's going to be a different reaction.
You get a bigger reward that night when you get a bigger treat.
I'm still trying to reward him.
A whole 50-pound bag of
One interesting point I left out on my initial comments, and we'll get back to questions. I'm sorry. One interesting point I left out on in my comments, but we'll get back to. These individuals, one was from Veracruz, Mexico, and the other was from Guerrero. The interesting point about that is this is the poppy region in Mexico. This is where the poppy is being grown in the heroin, and it's significant to us, and just think it's relevant to you as well.
As big as this bust is, I mean, this is one of countless busts. I mean, do you ever think it's either frustrating maybe trying to get your arms around all of this? I mean, for every one of these you catch, right? I mean, Lord knows how many go undetected.
I'm frustrated that there's people that are out there doing it. Yes, I mean, that frustrates me, but I'm not deterred by, I mean, it's a mission. I mean, listen, we can say that about, you know, since there's been banks open, there's been bank robberies. Are we frustrated they're still getting robbed? The bottom line is, if we are not out there on a day-to-day duty, our men and women, I would hate to see what the streets of this country would look like. Are we going to eliminate all of it? Not as long as there's a need. There's going to be people willing to come across. We have a wide open border. It's easy to get here, and quite frankly, they're producing and bringing into our country what we demand, what we want to use. So there's a number of layers here. You know, I think what U.S. Attorney Pack said is dead on. What is the message we're sending to our kids? Well, we're saying every drug is fine. It's going to heal everything. It's this. It needs to be legal. It starts there. I mean, listen, we are not going to arrest our way out of this. And to me, the key is prevention. We can talk all day long about treatment, but anybody that's been involved in this arena and sees it's a miserable life. I mean, addiction to opioids, whether it's heroin or whatever, is a miserable way of life. You are going to be addicted to a drug for the rest of your life to cope through it. It's not something we want. So to me, the key is getting out front of it in the beginning and preventing our kids from getting down there. And it goes back to us, the adults in the room, that we're sending messages and saying, oh, it's not that bad, let's legalize it and let's do this. And it's a terrible message, and I think we're paying the cost from it. Great question, though. Thank you.
Any idea where these were headed? If you popped them on the highway?
Yeah. Well, Atlanta is a regional hub for drugs. You guys all known this for years. You've covered many of these stories. So some of it would have stayed here, but this is a regional hub. It would have been gone up and down the East Coast, over to Chicago, everywhere. I mean, this is where it comes in, and this is the staging area. And it's also why we both see the money and the drugs in the same place. Most locations don't see that. but this is a regional hub. The money comes back here and then shipped to Mexico, and the drugs start here and get shipped out. We've got this before it even got broken up and got it to any of this made it to the street. This was at the wholesale value. None of this had made it to the street, so to answer you directly, it could have been going to several communities in Georgia and outside of Georgia.
We haven't seen the release yet. I know you mentioned some of this was found in the car that you stopped, but where did all the rest of this come from?
There were some residences. I don't have the address. She can, why don't you comment on that?
Certainly. It was a residence in Lawrenceville, 2220 Golden Valley Road, and that's part of the public record.
And how many arrests?
Currently 2.
Could you describe that house? What was it? Like
It was a ranch-style residence, 3 bedrooms, in a residential neighborhood, attached garage.
And the 2 who were arrested, were they driving the car, were the owners of the house? I mean, again, we haven't seen the release.
They're residents of the home, and I'm sorry, your other question, sir?
But it was their car, they were driving, they led you back to the house?
Certainly. Both who were arrested were also tied and connected to the car. During the interdiction, only one defendant was in that car. There was another one at the home.
Would you consider that like a hub, the house?
We'd call that a stash house.
Yeah.
It was a stash house where the money and drugs are being maintained, and someone would be left there to guard it. And then this individual was out doing his transportation. And the significance of what you see on the table, the compressor, the heroin was secreted in that. There was also a cooler where there was at least 3 kilos of that, either the cocaine, I can't remember which, was secreted inside between the wall of the insulation of the cooler and the cooler itself. So this is the kind of creativity they're using, and people wonder how you get this across the border. How many things come across the border, and this is the ingenuity that's being used. Inside that compressor was nothing but kilos of heroin.
Was the compressor in the house or was it in the car?
It was in the house.
And the weapons?
Weapons were in the house. Well, I'm sorry, one was in the house and one was in the car. Thank you for that.
So, again.
And there was also about 500 rounds of .223 ammunition for the AR-15.
So the larger
AK-47.
stash.
What did I say?
AR-15.
Yeah, sorry.
The larger stash of the heroin by far was in the house, but you found how much in the car? Can you break down for me where?
I'm sorry?
Can you break down for me where the seizures happened? So there was some in the car, and how much in the car and how much at the?
About, I believe it was 8 ounces in the car.
Yes.
There are 2 cars, so 8 ounces.
Go ahead. I'll let you.
Certainly. There were 8 ounces in the car that was interdicted off of I-85 at the Pleasant Hill Road exit. There were 19 kilograms of suspected heroin seized from the car in the attached garage. We also have a cooler that was referred to, 4 kilos of suspected controlled substance there in the garage. And then within the house, you have the cocaine, the suspected methamphetamine, and broken down, another kilo or so broken down of suspected heroin.
And BJ, can you speak to the charges these 2 now face? I mean, was it 2 males, male, female?
2 males.
2 males? Can you speak to
Yeah.
the charges?
Hispanic males.
2 Mexican nationals. They were both admitted to being here illegally.
Can you please give us the names?
Yeah, I think you're going to get that in a release afterwards. There'll be all the details will be provided, and actually a copy of the complaint, the criminal complaint.
And did you say something about it from Veracruz, Mexico?
One is from Veracruz, and the other was from Guerrero.
Out of cartel of Golfo?
We have that investigation still being conducted. We're looking at that. As you know, that region speaks for itself. So, yeah, there's not too many cartels allowed to operate there.
Aaron, to answer your question, they're currently under arrest on charges of conspiracy to possess with intent to distribute controlled substances. As you know, as the federal court procedure goes forward, they're arrested on a complaint, so we will be seeking an indictment within the next 30 days. And the charges could change or could expand to include substantive charges.
And the other thing, I want to just highlight just to the significance, what we're dealing with and what's at stake. If you look at the magazines, You know, they're taped up, ready. That's combat-style military, and again, 500 rounds of .223 ammunition. So this shows you the importance of this, protecting this to the cartels, to them, to the individuals here, the responsibility they have. All this is a strong indication to us on what we're dealing with that's operating here in this community.
Other questions?
The house, back to the house, typical neighborhood.
Resident?
Resident neighbor, the neighbors, what were their reaction? Now, surely when you guys popped the house, they came out.
I didn't interview these neighbors. I'll just speak generally. What normally happens is, you know, as you all know, they stand there and they're probably unaware. So they blend in on purpose. They're not trying to draw attention to themselves for obvious reasons. So sometimes, you know, they're referred to as your best neighbors. They're quiet. You don't see much. It's not what you think you'd see, a bunch of people coming and going. They don't want that. There's too much available at that house. So they take great pains in protecting the location of their stash house. If it gets out, that's, you know, there's no trust amongst these people that are involved in the peddling this death. They rob each other. They'll do whatever they can, anything to make a buck. So they take great pains in protecting the location of their stash houses.
Maybe speak to the dangers and the neighbors. I'm sure, you know, the neighbors in the neighborhood in Lawrenceville, maybe kids around families. I mean, talk about the danger that these two put this neighborhood.
Well, I'd just talk about the whole community at all. If this poison would have hit the street, we're talking about a lot of people's lives being destroyed. I mean, this is it right here, what we're talking about. So yes, individuals in that community, the community that they're selling it at, you know, again, you're right. If it goes back to what I said, protecting the location. If obviously, people find out about it, and it's not law enforcement. That's when you have the home invasions. That's when you have all the robberies. So yeah, that all this behavior, like U.S. Attorney Pack said, brings other crimes. You know, this no victim mantra that's out there, and it's harmless is absolute. Anybody in law enforcement sees the repercussions and the other crimes that come out of this drug trafficking.
It sounds like these guys were not on your radar, and it was just good beat cop work. Is that pretty much how these things are getting taken down?
Since this is an ongoing investigation, we were not at liberty to say that. But obviously, we have many, many active investigations, and a lot of times those investigative paths cross. But all that's important at this point is that there are charges pending against these two individuals, and we seek to expand and determine the full extent and the scope of the criminal activity. That's it.
Anyone else?
Yeah, you have any idea about the cartel possibilities behind this?
Again, it's ongoing. I would just say the region that they're from dictates a lot, and you know, we all know that the Gulf Cartel controls that region right now. But again, it's too early in the stages. My experience, I'll be shocked if it's not them.
Do you think these were gang members or like mules?
I'm not going to answer that right now. And for obvious reasons, I mean, we're looking at these two people right now.
Thank you very much.
Also, if you want to take an opportunity to get some specific sound from any one of these individuals, feel free to do so now.
Appreciate it. No, you're on the front line.
I'll stay with you, Sergeant. You're on line of defense.
Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yes, I know. And I just saw it.
I may want to
Inside the building?
Yeah, man. That's a lot. We used to see this field, and now there's not. 25. World game changer.
That's what I wanted to ask. Anybody who wants to talk, I want to say,
Like I said, this is a game-changing amount of heroin to us and all. This tells us how much we do not know when to see it. Again, I'm not say that all this is probably just shows you again, this is the third largest season we've seen, and I think the only Baltimore is leading several Are you looking at